This podcast is brought to you by On Track Studio.
Welcome back to Mind Your Head. This week, joining me in the studio is Ryan McCarthy. Ryan shares his inspiring journey from being addicted to drugs at 11 years old and how he has reshaped his life, now being 8 years sober and using his past experiences to mentor the youth of tomorrow. Ryan is such a down-to-earth, genuine human being, and he has showed us that no matter what, you can create the life that you want. Ryan, thanks very much for joining me on Mind Your Head. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, brother. It's a pleasure to be here and have another awesome conversation with you.
Yeah, that's right. I think the first time we met was about 2 weeks ago, or maybe even more. You were very generous, invited me onto your One Talk podcast, and it's something that we'll touch on a bit later. But there's something that you mentioned to me when we were having a little bit of a chit-chat in the kitchen. It shocked me, and it's something that played on my mind for a few days afterwards. And it was when you said that you were addicted to drugs at 11 years old.
Yeah.
And what came to mind about a week later was actually a TED talk that I watched from a guy called Johan Ari. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with him.
Yeah, but I haven't watched that specific TED
talk. So he's a British author and journalist, and he wrote some amazing books, Stolen Focus and Lost Connections. And he gave an amazing TED talk about addiction. And how he suggests that we're looking at addiction completely wrong. And he said, what if addiction isn't about your chemical hooks, but what if addiction is about your adaptation to your environment? He says that we should be not calling it addiction, but more so bonding. And I think as human beings, it's a natural need for us to bond with each other. And when we're happy and healthy, we connect and bond with each other.
Yep.
But when we can't do that, whether it's because of something traumatizing or feeling isolated, or just when the weight of life just comes down on you, we find something else to give us some sense of relief.
Yeah, most definitely.
And he poses that instead of asking addicts, what's wrong with you, we should be asking the question, what happened to you? And what happened in your environment to make you feel like you need a release from something. And that just, when I hear your story and when I listen to that TED talk, that's a question that I wanted to start off with you. Yep. If you want to go down that rabbit hole.
Most definitely, yeah.
Is what was going on in your environment that you needed a release from?
When I first started drugs. So what was happening in my environment was we moved to Queensland as a family unit. The family ended up splitting up, so it was me, my brother, sister, mum and dad. Sister went to Adelaide, brother moved to Adelaide, dad moved to England. It was just me and mum. And at the time, parents were dealing with cancer, especially her mum at the time, so she was flying in from England. So a lot of the time I was kind of lost at the age of 11. So I was looking for environments where I just felt comfortable. But a lot of this relates back to early on in my story where I felt comfortable in chaotic environments. So when I was at age 11, I sought a chaotic environment, found it, and that's where I found drugs and became addicted.
Really? What was the chaotic environment?
So, take everyone back a bit. I'm from Liverpool, England. I'm from a town called Highton. It's a great place, but there's a lot of crime. The environment's pretty rough as well. So growing up, it was quite on edge as well. I remember when I was about 6 years old, a kid around the same age as me got shot in the park for no reason. And from the age of 6, I was feeling like I had to look over my shoulder as a worry, like I always felt like I had to protect myself, and I always felt like I had to find a way to stay safe, but also stay on guard, and that made me quite aggressive at a young age as well. So then when we flew to Australia, when I was age 8, I was trying to adapt from moving from an environment that was quite intense to now coming to Australia, moving to Adelaide, where it was very calm. But I was like a storm in a calm lake. Like I just disrupted as much as I could. So like at the age of 8, I was going to the skate park, stealing bikes, robbing people, graffitiing up the whole school with like a gang that was in the local area.
Really?
Yeah, just because I wanted to be a part of that gang. So that all came from just my environment and seeing what the people around me were doing, and I thought that was something admirable to step into. So whenever there was a chaotic event or a chaotic environment, I always was attracted to it.
And you felt comfortable in a...
Super comfortable.
Really?
Yeah.
And when did, I guess, the drugs come into it? And
drugs.
What was I guess, your drug of choice?
Yeah, at the age of 11, it was weed. Weed was the first one. I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
A friend gave me a joint. I smoked it. And I remember at the time, that was my first ever time in my life where I ever felt calm. First ever time where I didn't feel crazy in that sense, because everyone always labeled me as like a crazy child, like reckless and whatnot. So that time I was like, I finally found something that helps me relax. So I started abusing weed, and from there on, I started to abuse like this synthetic weed, which was like, it was made with like loads of different chemicals. It was really bad for you. I knew of quite a few people that passed away from it. So doing this every single day for about a year then led to me wanting to pursue more harder drugs, more intense drugs, and just keep the abuse going.
It resonates with me a lot because the more I've thought about my history with drugs later in life, the more I've realised that I think I had an issue with control. So I felt like when I was sober, I had zero control over my emotions, my thoughts. It was just running rampant. It was controlling me.
Yeah.
And when I took drugs for the first time, and it felt like I had control over everything that was going on upstairs. Does that sound similar to you as well?
Yeah, most definitely, because you also get around environments that people are doing the same thing, so you feel more comfortable, and you do feel like you're in control of your environment because everything's the same. Everyone's doing the same thing as well.
Yeah.
So you easily settle in over time for sure.
Did your family know? Did your mum know?
No, mum didn't know. No one knew at all, because most of my family was in the UK or Adelaide. Mum didn't know because she was going for her own things with her parents passing away and flying back to England and whatnot. Yep. So no one knew in my life. And then school didn't know what to do with me, ended up getting expelled as well because they didn't know what was going on in my life, and I wasn't the most open child to say.
Most kids aren't really.
Yeah, exactly. And that time it was like I was a victim.
Yeah.
I played the victim card to the absolute T.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to continue those habits and those behaviours.
Was there any physical, I guess, symptoms of that addiction?
Yeah, I got super skinny.
Oh, did you? So when eating.
Yeah, so it got to a point, maybe at age 15, I ended up going to like school high in ice and speed. So I stayed up all night just smoking like ice and speed. Went to school, and then from there on, I just started abusing like pills and anything I could get my hands on. And that's when I got like super skinny, like eating like 2 pieces of toast a day. Got severely underweight, and I was, at the time, I'd view myself as someone that was out of shape, like overweight wise. But even though like I was a super skinny person, when I reflect back on photos now, I'm looking at myself, I can't even imagine myself being that thin. You know, crazy. Yeah.
Did you have any issues with social anxiety? Did it help you in social situations using drugs, or did you not have really an issue?
With social anxiety, I never believe I faced it, because from the age of 11, like I was always going to house parties, always surrounding myself with people. Like I was the type of person, like everyone knew me around my area. So like I didn't really have an issue socially because I was always out in situations where I had to be social.
Yeah. So would you say that you were quite popular? Did you have I
had quite a big network.
Quite a big friend circle. And were they all, I guess, doing all the same thing as you? Majority,
because it was kind of spread out. Like I was really good friends with the people that were doing the same things as me. I was really good friends with the people that weren't doing it. I was really good friends with the people that are a complete opposite end of life. So I was like a really likable person. I was never an asshole to anyone. I was never mean or disrespectful. Growing up, even to today, like one of my highest values is like just having respect for everyone. So I felt like that was a good sense in that time because it didn't get me in trouble, which was good, especially when it comes to social environments.
Yeah. But it did get you a little bit in trouble in school though.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I ended up getting kicked out of school.
Yeah. And what did you do after you got kicked out?
So when I got kicked out, I didn't know what to do. I ended up selling drugs because I was just like wanting more drugs basically, and I had no way to get them without having money. Yeah. Then I was like, wait, this isn't sustainable, so I've got to find a job. Yeah. So I ended up getting the job, working in the kitchen, and then my drug addiction got worse, especially more so with weed at this time. I was taking a lot of pills and everything I get my hands on, but this is when weed became like morning to sleep nonstop. So it got to a point where I started my job, I'd wake up, smoke, go to work, on my lunch break, smoke, finish, smoke, and just repeat for about 2 years straight.
Really?
Yeah, and then in between this was just like big nights on like pills, acid, anything I could get my hands on.
Yeah. Did you judge yourself while this was happening?
Nah, when I look back on it, it feels like I wasn't even experiencing life, if that makes sense. It felt like I was just on autopilot because at the age of 11, I found these things, as in drugs. And then from 11 till 18, when I finally got sober, it felt like I was just floating through and just finding a way to survive, basically.
Yeah, I know the exact feeling. I feel like you just sort of wake up and you go, where did that 5 years just go?
Yeah.
Like, what did I even do?
Yeah, literally. I'm like, even now when I reflect back, I can't remember too much about those days in detail because it was all just like a big blur into one because so much happened.
Did you talk to your mum about it?
No, I still haven't till this day. We've had
Really
somewhat conversations around it. She knows I used to be a drug addict. She knows I used to have issues with it. But we've never actually sat down and had the conversation.
Is that something that you would be open to doing?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. When were you aware that, hang on, this is a serious issue. This is a problem that I need to change. Or is there a moment that you realise, I can't keep doing this?
Yeah, there was one specific moment was, as we all know, schoolies. I went to schoolies and I got home. And it was 2 days after schoolies because during the whole 7 days, I probably slept about 6 hours. I was taking about 10 pills a day mixed with alcohol, mixed with weed, mixed with anything else I could get my hands on. So when I finally got back, I remember I was sitting in bed and my whole body was twitching for no reason, like especially my head. My head would just jolt like this, and it was going everywhere, and I just didn't know what was going on. But I was obviously sleep deprived and obviously abused my whole body, also my mental health for that whole week. And that's when I realized, like, what am I actually doing here? Like, is everything I'm doing worth me feeling like this? And that's when I first started to feel guilt and shame for my actions.
Yeah. I call that... I think I spoke to you about that in your podcast, was the light bulb moment. And I had the same thing. I went on a bender down to Sydney and it was like 4 or 5 days with no sleep, hardly any water. And I was trying to go to sleep and my body was just shocking me awake. It wouldn't let me go to sleep. And then I ended up checking myself into hospital, telling the nurses, the doctors. And it was just a combination of too many drugs, not enough sleep, not enough water, and your body... They still don't know the scientific reason for it, but they think because the drugs fried your sort of nervous system, that when you're closing your eyes, you go to sleep, your body thinks it's dying.
Yeah, it's like a shock.
It's like a protection sort of safe system that to shock you awake.
Yeah.
And I thought, I remember them telling me this, and I couldn't believe that I've got myself in this situation. I put myself in this position, and it was like a light bulb moment. And it's something that you've experienced as yourself that sort of was it like a flick of the switch? Did you have to do, I guess, any rehab or anything like that? Was this a complete change of mindset? Because
at the time I didn't believe in getting help. I essentially kind of grew up by myself to this point. So I was always self-reliant. I always got by myself. And I was like, if I'm doing this, it has to be me and me only. And I wouldn't recommend it to people if I have someone or I work with someone that is overcoming addiction, because I believe support is key, having people around you. For me personally, it's something that I believe I had to do by myself at the time. But the light switch moment was more so probably the first time I can remember actually consciously thinking.
Really?
Like, because before then, I felt like I was always on autopilot. Like, even as a kid, because you're programmed by your environment, you kind of just copy the examples around you.
Yeah.
And then when I got into a teenager, I wasn't able to fully express who I was, because from 11 till 18, I was just completely numb. Because any emotion, straight away drugs. Any emotion, straight away drugs. So I was never able to truly express myself. So when I had that moment after schoolies, that's when the first time I actually thought more consciously in my life.
Did you reach breaking point? Was there a real dark moment that maybe you considered taking your own life? Was there anything like that?
When I considered taking my own life, that was when I became sober. Because when I became sober from drugs, it was a 3-year period, or 2 to 3 year period, which is the first ever time in my life where I had an emotion and I wasn't able to numb it.
Yeah.
So when I first got sober, I had all this anxiety come up. This when social anxiety came into my life, depression. My best mate would come to my house. I couldn't leave my room because I'd be shaking like uncontrollably from anxiety. And then it was around that time when I contemplated ending my life. But when it came to abusing drugs, I never had that ideation. It was more so of just trying to find some willpower to try and quit.
Yeah, and how did you find that willpower? What was the process you took?
Yeah, so my process, I wouldn't recommend to people as well. It's not the smartest way to do it, but
this is what not to do.
Exactly. So I was like, I kind of did like a brain dump of all the drugs I was abusing, and I was like, what's the one that I'm addicted to the most, and I can quit that and still use the other ones. I was like, weed, I can't go without it from morning to sleep, like it's non-stop. So I was like, if I can quit weed, I'll eventually quit pills and all the other stuff I was doing. So about 3 months after schoolies, I eventually quit weed, and then I just went full cold turkey. And then for the next 9 months, I just kept abusing all the other drugs. But then at the end of that 9 months, I was able to reflect back and say, if I was able to quit the thing I was addicted to the most, I can quit these because they don't have such a strong foothold in my life. And then from that day, I was able to quit completely.
When you quit completely, how old were you? 17?
18.
18.
The weekend after my 18th.
And this is something that I experienced, and I'm really interested to see if it's the same with you, is when you quit all drugs and when you were using it to numb feelings and emotions, did you feel the weight of your mental health because you couldn't use anything to numb those feelings, and then did it all sort of hit you at once?
Yeah, for sure. Because when I first quit, I sat in my room by myself in the dark for about 2 weeks, just like basically detoxing. Right. So I didn't leave my room. I was sweating. I wasn't eating. And after 2 weeks, I eventually like came out of my room and started finding myself. And then from there on, that's when I started feeling anxious because I was withdrawing from drugs, got social anxiety, and that's when all the depression and mental health challenges kicked in.
Do you find it easier now that, because you've expressed your emotions now, do you find it easier to express them?
Yeah, most definitely. Sort
of a, I don't want to use the term open a can of worms, but is it similar to that?
Most definitely, because now I'm such an open book. Like if I have the littlest thing that comes in my mind, I'm very open about sharing that and being able to find a way to overcome it in the moment. Because over the years, with all the work I've done professionally and also personally, I've learned over the years like how important it is to process emotions, process feelings, thoughts, etc. But at the time, not really, no. It was more so when I started to get into the work I'm doing now is when I first started to realise the importance of looking after your mental health.
Yeah, and what have you replaced weed with? What have you replaced drugs with to help you with your emotions and your feelings?
Yeah, so initially it was like I had to go and exercise. I went to the gym. So I signed up to a gym. So shout out to Average Joel's gym. He's an absolute man.
Where's that?
On Brabby Island.
Brabby Island, yeah, nice.
So Joel, if you're watching this, shout out. But it was just like somewhat of a father figure to me because I went to the gym. I was very insecure. I was super skinny, thin. I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost. But straight away, he took me under his wing from probably about the age of 16, 17. And he just guided me through that process. And then when I quit drugs, that's when I started going to gym more regularly to try and build up some confidence, try and deal with depression, try and deal with anxiety, and just start putting more healthy environments into my life. Because, like you go to a gym, everyone's there to better themselves. And every time I went to the gym, I felt that energy. So for me, that was the first thing in my whole life where I felt I'm actually doing something for good.
Yeah, and that's such a key point you made there was changing your environment. And there's that quote, like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Yeah.
And did you have to let go of some of those friends that you were hanging around with during that time?
Yeah, I would say yes, because I had a big group of people.
Yep.
So there was some people I had to, I wouldn't say let go, but just lose contact with over time. Like, because I was on a different path to them, I just started to surround myself with different people, and then over time you end up losing contact.
Yeah.
So that's what it mainly was. But a lot of the people in my life at that time have grown with me as well, and a lot of them have made positive changes in their life. So it's been a really cool thing to see some of my best mates, and we've actually overcome these things we used to do back in the day and start living a better life together.
That's amazing. So you've all done it together.
Yeah, so I was the first, and then I think my friends seeing me do it motivated them, being like, we can actually change. We can do something better with ourselves. We can get something different out of life rather than living in these cycles that are destroying us. Yeah. And I believe, I'm not saying this just from my own belief, but they've actually told me this, like, once they see me doing it, they're able to follow my steps. Then eventually we're all able to support each other.
Yeah, it's that ripple effect, especially with men. I think when you see one of your mates do it, it sort of gives you permission to do it as well. And I can relate this to this podcast. Before this podcast, most of my friends wouldn't talk too deeply with each other. There'd be a little bit here and there, but we wouldn't be too open.
Yeah. And
I think I was a bit hesitant to see what the reaction was going to be like when I first started this podcast. And now that when we have chats and now all the guests have come on and shared their stories and been really vulnerable and open with each other, I can see the shift in my friends group a little bit, and seeing what questions we ask each other now. Yeah. It used to be a lot work, sport, sports bet, beers, something like that. And sometimes it is. It's always good to have a bit of fun. But I think what I really love is that I think some of the boys are asking each other more in-depth questions. How are the kids? How's the family? How's your health?
Yeah.
Like they're more in tune to those sorts of things, especially when we're getting older too.
I feel like us as men too, we need that one person just to do it, for all of us to be like, oh,
yeah,
we can actually do this. We can actually talk about this.
Yeah, and it's not embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't feel shame or guilt, and it's okay to be vulnerable with each other. And I think in my friends group, I think that we take pride in sort of taking the piss out of each other and having a bit of fun. But I think that it's so important that I've shown that it's okay to be vulnerable with each other. And I think it's brought us closer together as a friends group as well. Yeah. This might be a bit of a tough question to answer, but when you were going through your recovery and being sober, did you have an issue with your identity, finding out who you are?
Good question. Yeah, definitely. Because my identity up until the point I got sober was I was the person who always had drugs, basically. Like every party I went to, I was that guy. I was always in those circles. So when I became sober, it's like I wasn't surrounding myself with those people. I wasn't engaging in certain circles because I didn't want to be around it. Mm-hmm. So it was like, who am I really? And I believe that played a lot into feeling worthless in life as well as wanting to end life, because I thought, I don't know who I am. What's the point of being here at the time? So one thing I learned was how important it is to actually find who you truly are.
How did you do that?
Good question as well. One thing I had to do was, like, initially my thought process was I need to find something bigger than me. I was like, the reason I hate life is because I'm so focused on myself. And I was like, what's one thing I could do? Focus on something that's not me and that's something that's bigger than me, and maybe through that I'll find myself. Unfortunately enough, it worked. So what I did was I started up a Instagram page, which is One Talk now. But when I first started, it was called Mental Health Experience. I started that page with the intention to share the struggles I'm going through. This, just to give more background, this was in June 2018 I started this. But it was just to give more background on people and give them more understanding of mental health, the challenges I go through and how I'm overcoming them in the moment. And it was also a way for me to keep accountable as well with the growth and becoming a better version of myself. And through that journey of creating that page and creating the awareness at the time and creating the impact and bringing people together, I ended up finding myself through that process.
Amazing. Did you have any pushback or anything when you went from the drug addict to the mental health advocate?
I was at the start, I was very worried. Like middle of 2018 at the time, I didn't know anyone in my own life that was talking about mental health. I was very worried of doing it. I was like, shit, like I'm going to open up about this to everyone. I'm like, I was very worried at the time. But fortunately enough, as soon as I did it, it was like what we talked about before. It was like that relief moment, like where your boys around, you have that relief and everyone can open up and talk. It was like when I did it, it was like a big sigh of everyone around me and everyone that I knew. Because like, yes, this is becoming normal where we can actually open up and talk and connect. And then within like 2 months of me creating the page, I was getting like paragraphs from people that I extensively knew, but just like trying to find ways of challenges they're going through and seeing like how I can support them. And that made me motivated to study more with psychology and mental health and mindset. And that's when I've truly found my passion with helping people.
So what's your passion now?
Helping people become the best version of themselves.
Yeah.
Because I believe everyone has success, and I feel like we get confused on what success is, because for each person, I feel like there's probably one or two ideas of what success is, but we don't truly identify what success means to us. Like success to someone could be starting up a charity and just cooking food for homeless people. The next person, it could be earning $1 billion. They're both great, but they're both linked to each person's values and what truly fulfills them in life. So I think everyone has that success within them. It's just helping them find it. I'm very passionate about helping people that can't see that and helping them find that. I
love that, because that's something that I've really delved into lately, is defining success.
Yeah.
And who I see as a successful person is very different to what society thinks in terms of money, job, status. Yeah. That honestly doesn't mean anything to me.
What does success mean for you?
When I see someone that I think is successful, I want to see a kind, generous soul. That's what I look for. I don't care how much money they earn. I don't care what job they have. I don't care what car they drive or where they live. All I want to see from that person is a kind, generous, empathetic person that is willing to help the stranger on the street as much as their own mum.
Yeah.
And that's why I judge, that's why I sort of judge off someone is when someone says they're successful, I would love to go, well, I want to go have a chat to them and see if that's sort of my successful.
Yeah, and I feel like that's why you can see some of these super wealthy people and they're still struggling with challenges, is because I feel like they actually haven't identified within themselves what success is to them. It may be like a society thing, like you said. So it's truly finding out what that is. Like for me, I want wealth, but I feel like for me specifically, like success is if I become the best version of myself, my life around me is only going to benefit from that. It's like my fiance is only going to get the best version of me. My kids in the future will only get the best version of me. People at work, the people I meet on the street. So I feel like success to me is just constantly focus on becoming the best version of me, so then everything around me glows.
So what are you doing in your life that's aligning you with that success? I know you mentioned the gym, your work that you're doing now. Yeah. Is there other things that you are doing to align yourself with that success?
I feel like it's making sure that I'm always in control, because like I said earlier, I was never in control. I was always on autopilot. So for now, it's making sure my mental health, my well-being is always in check. And within the last 3 years, I haven't struggled at all mentally. That's because I've constantly made sure I've had things in place at all times. I'm always ready. I'm always conscious. I'm always finding ways to pick my brain apart to make sure that I'm on track consistently. I may be over-obsessive, but it works for now.
What are the things?
So I do like a fortnightly audit, for an example. So every fortnight I sit down and I do a massive brain dump of everything in the last fortnight that was a challenging thought, everything that was a positive thought, helpful thought, unhelpful thought. Now I think, all right, what caused that unhelpful thought? Because there's something linked into that unhelpful thought that made me feel like that. So it's making sure that when I identify it, I'm not repeating those same habits to make those thoughts repeat. And then it's like, cool, what's the counter to that? So for an example, it's like, if I feel shit for appearance, it's like, cool, what am I doing that's making me feel shit about my appearance? It's like, all right, I'm not eating correctly. It's like, what can I do? Eat correctly. So for the next fortnight, my goal is to eat correctly so I can make sure that I'm on a good momentum, making me feel better. Then after that fortnight, I just repeat the audit.
How long have you been doing that for?
I would say about 2 years. Over 2 years. Probably 3 years now, yeah.
So you're really dissecting your emotions and your thoughts and not being so attached to them and letting them control you.
Well, most definitely, because a book I read was The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Yeah. And an amazing book. I recommend everyone to read it. But one thing that I learned within that book is that when we have thoughts that trigger our emotions, it's going to have an unhelpful impact on our mental health. So I became quite obsessed on like, how can I separate the emotions from thoughts? Obviously the unhelpful and negative thoughts, because you want the attachment to the positive thoughts. But it's like, how can I have this skill to detach? Yeah. So one thing I started to do consistently was like meditation. Yeah. And I would picture myself sitting back, watching my thoughts like a movie, and not controlling any thought, letting every thought come and go, and not telling any of them to leave, not telling any of them to stop. We're truly accepting every thought and watching them pass. And then through there, to an extension, I learned that if we have thoughts and we're telling them to go, we're telling them to leave, we're telling them to stop, we're reinforcing those thoughts to come back in. Because us, through like primal animals, we have thoughts play out in our head as a safety measure to make sure we stay alive. So the thoughts that feel scary, that feel negative or unhelpful, usually that's like the saber-toothed tiger. We repeat thoughts like that in our head because it keeps us alive. But once we accept thoughts and let them go, we're not connecting those emotions to those thoughts. So a big thing for me for the last 2 to 3 years is making sure that I have that foothold between thoughts and emotions.
I love that. I need to read that book, I think. Yeah. I think one of my issues is letting go of things. I am slowly getting better, I think, with my patience and not being controlled by thought. I'm trying not to say when things upset me, say that person upset me. That person did upset you. That person didn't do that, or that thing didn't. You're doing that to yourself. Yeah. So I'm really trying to like detach my emotions with my thoughts and try to let things go a bit more.
That's a super hard thing to do. Like I still, I said I haven't struggled in the last 3 years, but doesn't mean I don't have moments where challenges arise, right? Yeah. So like a thought will arise, I feel emotionally connected to it straight away. I'm like, shit, we have to put in work right now. Yeah. Otherwise this is going to drag on. I'm going to go home in the shit mood. I'm going to wake up tomorrow. So it's making sure initially I implement things like breath work. I implement things like meditation. It all depends on different situations and what tool I can implement. But it's just finding ways to help with and support with putting the foot between the thoughts and emotions. And it's just finding ways that work for you.
Have you found something that helped your level of awareness, actually recognizing those moments? And I'm saying that because I got to 30 and I don't know what happened. I've talked to psychologists, I've talked to psychiatrists, and I said to them, when I got to 30, I don't know what happened in my brain, but I became hyper aware of what triggers me, as opposed to when I'm in my 20s, when something triggered me, when I got anger, I never thought of the reason why. Yeah. I always was just in the anger and never, like, once I got out of it, I never actually looked back and go, hang on a second, what actually triggered me? Until I got to 30, and then all of a sudden I just looked at myself completely different. Did you feel the same? Does something help you with your level of awareness?
100%. So I was similar. I was very reactive.
Yeah.
And then even when I overcame my mental health challenges, so I overcame them at the age of 20. I'm now 25. So still from the age of 20 to 22, I was still in a reactive state. I was still getting intrusive thoughts that would come in, and it just felt like a wildfire. Like I couldn't control them. But then I saw a friend of mine post in their story saying they're going to a Cool to Be Conscious event. This is like 3 years ago when they first started. I'm like, what is that? Meditation, breath work. And I first sat there, I was like, I'm not the type of person to sit in a circle and breathe. Like, I was very stubborn in my thought process with it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself and go. Like, maybe there's a reason, there's a resistance there. Then I went to the event, did like an hour breath work / meditation, did a connection exercise after it. And I felt like from that moment on, the level of awareness just opened up. Yeah. And then I kept going to more events, more retreats, more workshops. Yeah. And I felt like that just kept leveling it up. And then when I started to practice meditation and breath work at my house and doing it on my own, I feel like it was just expanding and expanding over time.
And that's a key thing, that there are options. There's plenty for us out there. I think what you have done is just replace that addiction with breath work, with gym, with positive thinking, with helping people. Did you get around a bit of ice baths and stuff?
Yeah, I've got one in the house.
Oh, do you? Oh, great.
Yeah, maybe a bit too much, but I love the ice,
Yeah, so there's so many, if there's people listening and I guess if they're feeling a bit lost and they don't know what direction to go in, I think just to start what you've done, there's plenty of events, there's plenty of podcasts and books out there too. Even to start with simple breath work honestly is life-changing. I did that. I got Travis on the podcast probably a couple of months ago, and we started with a bit of breath work. I think I was telling you the 777.
The 777,
yeah, that rattled me. Well, that's the first time I've ever done that sort of breath work before.
What was your thoughts before the breath, and then what was your thoughts after it?
My thoughts before the breath were very typical pre-podcast thoughts in terms of how am I going to start? I hope these questions go well. Very like podcast orientated self-reflection. How am I going to do the best job here? Yeah. That was pre breath work, and we did the 777, and I was very clear. It was it was all other thoughts or worries or a little bit of like anxieties about how it's going to go. That all left, and I felt very present. Very in the moment and present, and there were no other nervous feels or no other thoughts about how it's going to go. I just remember sitting here and I felt lightheaded, but light in how I felt like this. I didn't feel like my whole weight was on this chair. It feels really, I don't know how to describe it, but I felt really weightless.
Yeah, somewhat floating.
Yeah, somewhat floating. Yeah, I think I said that. And then the conversation just flowed. And I think I messaged him that night. Yeah. I said to him, what's this dark magic you got me on? And he sent me a whole lot of other stuff to work on. And I recently went down to the Macquarie University down in Sydney to go to a concussion clinic. I suffered a fair few concussions when I was playing rugby. And I was worried that I might have the early stages of CTE, which is chronic brain trauma from repeated head knocks. And a lot of the symptoms that I was presenting with sort of matched up with that condition. And I was like, with that illness. And I was like, oh, fuck, like I'm too old. I'm too young to be having these sorts of things. And the specialist, what she said to me was, one of the best things you can do to manage your symptoms is, have you ever tried breath work?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I actually did try breath work for the first time a couple of weeks before this. And she said, how did you go? And I went, it was actually really good. And she said, listen, we don't do any drug. It's too early to do any drugs, and you're too young to be sort of going down that path just yet. Just monitor it and see how you get on. But she said the best thing you could possibly do is try breath work and meditation. And I was like, holy shit, I think this is the road I need to go down.
Has so much power, like for mental health, physical health, internal health. Like, I've never shared this publicly, but it's something that I'm more than happy to share. So when I was 19 years old, I was diagnosed with a chronic kidney disease. And when I was 19, they were saying things like to me, your kidneys are going to rapidly decline, you're probably going to die soon, things like that. And I was like, oh shit, like this is fucking pretty daunting. And then now it's been about 6 years since I got diagnosed. And every time I see my specialist, he's mind blown. He's like, why are your results coming back better each time? Now he's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just make sure I live a stress-free life. That's my biggest thing in life, live stress-free. Wow. So make sure I breath work every day. Make sure I connect to a higher being every day, whether that's God or internal spirit. Do breath work. And it's just making sure that every day I'm living stress-free. Let me rephrase that, because I believe stress is good in certain things in life. When it comes to growth, you need some level of stress, but just more so stress with reactions and thoughts and emotions, making sure that I'm not controlled by it.
What are some good stresses?
Good stresses, I would say, would be an example, my podcast. I'll give that as an example because it's something I'm living. Sometimes I will book in a lot of guests within a short period of time. And it may feel stressful with it coming up. I'm like, I've got all this to prepare for, all this editing to prepare for. I've got so much coming up. But I'm like, through stress and pressure, that's how you grow and expand in life. You know, you think about a tree growing into the ground, it has to cause stress into the soil for the roots to grow and expand. And it's similar with life. You know, you got to be under some certain level of stress to grow. With gym, you got to put your muscles under stress for your muscles to grow. So with things when it comes to bettering your life or growing in certain areas of your life, I believe stress is absolutely essential. But when I look at stress, you got to look at it like a rubber band. You want to stretch it but not snap it. So you got to find the part where you feel like you're stretching it or you're stretching yourself. Like, cool, this is enough. This is enough stress for now. Because as soon as you snap it, that's when things like burnout come in. Yeah,
100%. And I think that's a really good point you made. I think that a lot of us, we live in a very comfortable life. Yeah. Even it's just made for us to, everything's one click of a button and we can get anything we want.
Yeah, instant gratification.
Instant gratification. And I think that we're putting ourselves less and less discomfort. And what I've realised, and I fell in this trap too, is that I experience my most growth when I'm in discomfort. It can be something like starting a podcast, putting myself out there that I don't normally do. But in this process, I've had extreme amount of growth. And then physical-wise, I mentioned on your podcast is that I need to put myself through some pain.
Yeah. There's
a level of pain that I need to go through to find growth and feel like I'm progressing.
I feel like us as men specifically, we need something to conquer. We need that feeling of conquest. We need to be on the journey of, like, that hero journey of overcoming something or achieving something. I feel like that's super important for a man to have a direction, a purpose, or a mission. I feel like another big part that I didn't mention before around overcoming challenges of mental health is that a reason why I feel like I don't struggle anymore is because I have a mission. And if I stay dedicated to my mission every day, I don't feel like much can throw me off in life because I know what my mission is and every day I'm waking up to pursue it.
Let's talk about your mission. Is that the work that you're doing now?
Yeah.
So can you tell us what it is?
So I do quite a few things. So I do case management for a youth service. So I do youth work, but I can't talk too much about that just because of confidentiality.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
But also, like for One Talk, I have the podcast. Then I also do like events and retreats as well. So it's all around helping people, like I said before, find that success within them, be around a good environment, and basically just giving people the things I never had when I was in that journey of trying to find environments as well. You know, like having the environment there for people to step into and a bunch of people around there pushing each other to be better and having a good time as well.
And you look back on it now, is that some of the negative things that you've experienced in your life, you've now turned that into positive traits and now helping the the next generation? And how important is that to, in somewhat, go through some serious hardships that now you can relate to other people that are going through similar things?
Yeah, and I feel like that's why I get that's why I get good results with work. And I feel like with myself, when I look back on my past, I'm very grateful for the life I lived. I'm very grateful for all the challenges I've been through, very grateful for the experience and environment I'm in, because everything made me the person I am today. And I feel like going through everything I've been through has made me strong-minded right now. This has helped me stay with discipline, because now I look back when I need discipline or I need motivation or anything around that nature, I reflect back in my past and I think, what would I do to get drugs? Like, I'll do the craziest shit to go and get on. But it's like, if I can do that, like, what stopped me from putting my shoes on and going to the gym? So it's like, cool, I'm putting my shoes on and going to the gym.
So true. That perspective, and that's something that I got out of that run that I did, was that I put myself through so much pain and suffering over something that I hate. Yeah. I hated that. Not one bit of me enjoyed it. But I remember finishing going, if I can put myself through all that pain and suffering over something that I hate and I don't enjoy, imagine what I'm capable of when it's something that I love and something that I'm passionate about.
Yeah, like think about how much energy you'll be able to export once it's towards something that's going to actually fulfill you.
Exactly. And then I remember finishing the run and I'm thinking, man, I thought I was at sort of close to my limit in terms of what I can offer. And then after I did that run, I'm like, fuck, I'm selling myself so short here. There's so much more that I can give and put into this.
Yeah, I feel like it's also, like you said before, it's getting uncomfortable like you did with that run. Like another example I can give is like public speaking. Through school, I didn't do work. From grade 8 onwards, I didn't do an assignment or a quiz. I didn't do anything.
What did you do, handball?
Yeah, literally just handball, just shredding up in handball. Now I was an expert at that, don't you worry.
There was a couple of lines here.
Got ball in the bag. But so I didn't know public speaking ever. And then when I started doing events and retreats, I had to speak in front of a crowd. I remember my first time doing it, I was just so caught up in my thoughts. I was so stressed out. Like, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, every thought was going through my head. But then after doing it a few times, I'm no longer stressed by it. Yeah, nice. Because I've done the repetition of doing that thing. And you probably felt the same thing. Like, I definitely felt this to starting podcasts. My first probably 4 or 5, I was super nervous in every episode. But then now I can jump on the podcast and just speak like there's no tomorrow and just flow with it and forget about the lights and cameras and microphones. And But over time, you just get comfortable in that environment. But then it's like, cool, I'm comfortable now. What's something else I can do to push myself to grow? Yeah,
something that you said to me in your podcast is the top of one mountain is the bottom of the next. Is that right? Yeah, and it's so true. And I think that you really hit the nail on the head then when you said, I think that we're all so scared to try something new. And that I can speak personally on that because I was so scared to look like a fool. And when you start something new, you're always going to look like a fool. Yeah. And I was so scared to look like a fool that I just never tried. And I thought failure was the worst thing, you know, and even the way that schools are set up or society is set up, that when someone tries and fails, it's like everyone just fucking gets on them. Yeah. Like it's the worst thing ever. But I think the worst thing ever is not trying at all. Yeah. I think failure shouldn't be so scrutinised. I think if they've given it a go, they've tried and they've failed, I think failing is a necessity. I think it's needed. Yeah,
100%. I say to people 10 L's from losses to lessons.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It's all about perspective, right?
Yeah.
The things that we do, the different perspective we have on things, then also changes the internal dialogue within ourselves. We end up changing our thought patterns and our beliefs and emotions as well. It's like you said, you know, like when you look at a view of the world, like an example, road rage, if someone cuts me off and I feel triggered, I can blame them because they cut me off, but I'm the one that's triggered. It's like, cool, I can become accountable in this moment and realize I'm the one in control on how I feel. And whatever he's done just there has happened. There's nothing that can be done now. So taking accountability for it in the moment as well.
Yeah, 100%. And just to go back to your work, I know you can't speak too much of it, but I'm really interested to know, is there things that help you handle situations at work? I know they can be very traumatizing and confronting some of the things that you witness. I'm really interested to know, is there things that you do to sort of separate yourself?
Yeah, do you mean more so like when I finish work?
Yeah, when you finish work and come home, and I've talked to some friends who are paramedics, so to speak, and they see some terrible, terrible things on a daily basis, and then they come home and I'm like, how can you just switch off? Like I struggle. Like I was a first responder at at a car accident where someone died, and it was a very remote area, and the ambulance took too long to get. It was just a remote area, like it just took so long to get out there, and we were watching him go in and out of consciousness. And that is the first time I've ever seen someone die in front of me. And I watched through the whole process of someone waking up knowing how much pain they're in and then passing out again. And I never knew how much that affected me until years later when I was having really bad nightmares. And what triggered me was because I witnessed a car accident happen. What triggered me was bad drivers, because I could be safe on the road and then my life could be in jeopardy from someone else's silly act. And that really triggered me, like speeding or cutting people off, going through reds. People don't realise the consequences for their actions until something fatal like that happens. Earlier on, I would almost avoid driving as much as I can, or going through busy moments of the day when it's like the rush hour at morning and afternoon. Yeah. And then I had to sort of come to terms with it and let go of, I guess, that trauma that I was holding on to.
How did you do that?
A lot of acceptance. I think I had to firstly talk about it and not pretend like it's not there or it didn't happen. I had to fully embrace, and almost like it's almost like a grieving process. Like you actually had to, I never gave myself time. I went into shock and I remember like ambos came, took them away. And I remember like sitting there and I was shaking, and the police was like sort of getting statements from all the witnesses and everything. And I remember they're shaking, and then someone was like, "You're not right, are you?" And I was like, "No, what's happening?" You go sit down, have some sugar. Like, gave me some chocolate. Like, because you need a bit of sugar, go in a bit of shock. I just thought, like, I've seen movies, I've seen car accidents, I've seen war movies. Like, I should be fine. But when you actually see it in real life, it's something that I never want to see again.
Yeah.
And the nightmares lasted a few years, and then it wasn't until someone said, "What are you having nightmares about?" And I said, "I'm in a car and it crashes, but then I'm on the outside looking at the car crashing." So I was in the car, and then I'm on the outside, and then someone's like, "That's a really weird dream." And then I'm like, well, I was a first responder at a car, and then it all sort of made sense why I was having sort of these nightmares. It was the same nightmare over every single night. Someone bought me a little night catcher, a dream catcher.
Yeah.
And I was like, this thing's not going to fucking work.
Did it?
It actually did. Yeah. But yeah, it was finding out those sort of triggers and just accepting them and actually talking to someone about them and saying, and not holding on to it. I think a lot of my issues came where I ignored those feelings. And like what you said, the process, and in that book, Power of Now, when emotion came in, I would just either ignore it or pretend like it didn't happen. Yeah. And like what you're saying, for when emotions come in, just embrace them, let them come in, and then let them flow back out again. But there was a blockage for me. I wouldn't as soon as they came, I wouldn't let them come anywhere near me. So that was the process of almost like grieving, like let it out. Like, what are you feeling? Let it all out. And the more I sort of like talked to people about it and embraced that trauma over time, it wasn't a quick fix, it wasn't a quick heal, but over time, I noticed that my nightmares were going away and I was actually having good sleeps. And when someone cuts me off on the road, it got to a point where I'll like go to say something and then I'll go, "No, it's all right." And then I was like, "Oh wow, I didn't actually." I semi-react, but it wasn't as bad as I normally do. And then as the sort of months go on, I don't do that anymore. So that was a huge thing for me, was just recognising it.
What was the time frame? From, let's just say, the nightmares when you first got the awareness to then when you started to feel like you had more control over it?
2015 to 2020. It was about 4 years of denial.
Yeah.
4 years of nightmares and 4 years of denial. And then someone was like, "That's weird you have nightmares about that." And then that's when it sparked it. And I was like, I thought I'd forgotten about it, but my brain didn't forget about it in a subconscious sort of way. Like I thought that wasn't an issue, but internally that was a fucking issue.
Yeah, still holding on.
Still holding on to it. So it was about 5 years. Yeah. And then I started talking about it, and then I started recognising it. I think once you sort of recognise that that's the source of it, it just opened the door, and then it was more free-flowing in terms of my emotions towards that, and then my triggers, and then I can pinpoint, that's why when someone cuts me off, and I could really like connect the dots.
Yeah.
And that was like my sort of first stage of recovery in that way.
Yeah, 100%. That's why it's so important, like Eckhart Tolle with the power of now, because he really teaches you to stand and just watch your thoughts completely. And I feel like that helped me as well, just with the acceptance of them and not letting them bother me. So now when a thought comes in that would be intrusive, now it's just like it doesn't have an effect on me because I'm able to just straight away detach in that sense, because over the time you put in the work to learn the skill, but then you have moments where every now and then one will attach, but then it's like implementing the other tools that you have, like breath work. So if you are listening to this and I should keep on the topic of road rage, like if you struggle with road rage and yelling at people or someone cuts you off or whatever it is, you go into like a fight, flight, or freeze. So your sympathetic nervous system is getting triggered. And one thing you want to do is get out of that fight, flight, or freeze. So it's just things like breath work. So if you do simply 5 seconds in the nose, 5 seconds out the nose, and repeat that until your nervous system settles, it's going to change your whole state. Because what it's doing is it's settling your nervous system, it's lowering your blood pressure, and it's slowing down your heart rate. And within 30 seconds, you can completely change your state. And by saying that to an extension has triggered a train of thought within me to touch on that you can change your state. For the longest time, I didn't know I could change the state. Like you probably relate in moments in your life where you felt angry and you're just so absorbed by that emotion. You're like, hey, this is the way I feel. Then years later, you realize now, like I can truly change my state and how I feel. And that's something I always remind myself in the moment where I feel triggers. Like I can choose how I feel right now.
Yeah, 100%. And that was a huge game changer for me, knowing that I am in control. Before this journey that I was on, I always felt when I was sober, I was out of control. I was not in control of any of my emotions. They were all controlling me. I was just a little puppet. And that's why I was taking drugs, to gain some sort of sense of control. Yeah. And then I've replaced that with mindfulness, even just being more open about my feelings and voicing them. I've realized that I'm in control of more than I think I am.
When it comes to mindfulness, like what does that look like to you? Is it a daily thing? Is it a weekly thing? Because I feel like for people that have never done mindfulness before, there's a big misconception that you have to sit there for 2 hours and hum. So like I want to ask, like, what is it personally for you? And then I'll share mine as well.
Yeah, 100%. So morning routine is a huge one for me. So when I'm back on the coast, when I'm come back from work, back on the coast, I love my morning routine. We've got a pool at our complex. So I'll jump in the pool. And it's funny, the pool I hadn't used all during summer. And as soon as it turned winter, I was like, I want to do some pool cold plunges. And my girlfriend's like, well, the fuck are you using it in winter? You didn't even use it in summer. So I'll jump in the pool. I've got my dog there. I drop my girlfriend to work. I go straight to the dog beach. Will be about 2.5K walk, dog beach, ocean swim, come back. So it'll be some sort of fruit smoothie, eggs on sourdough, off to the gym. We'll do some breath work at the gym. Some stretching is huge as well. If I've got a podcast lined up, there'll be some prep for the podcast. We'll be coming back. And then we will do I'll try to get another nap in, to be honest with you. Yeah. I'm big on just having another midday nap. And that's pretty much like we'll do some saunas, ice baths, pick up my girlfriend, we go straight to the dog beach again. And what me and my girlfriend have just started incorporating probably within the last year is that we ask each other at the end of the day, what went well for you that day? Yeah. You got to name 3 things. Not what you're grateful for, but what specifically went well for you that day. I think that will lead a lot of questions and a lot of conversations and just be a bit more open. I feel like when I'm doing these podcasts with guests, I've got a little fear that I'm putting more effort into these guests with these types of questions than I am at home sometimes. Yeah. And I'm very aware of that. So when I come home, I don't want her to feel like I'm putting more effort and trying to get to know these guests than I am with my own partner. Yeah. So when I get home, I'll try to it's funny because I'll try to hit her with some deep questions after work and she's like, the fuck you asked me this question for?
Don't worry, with my partner as well, we'll be driving and I'll just talk for an hour on the rant and she's just sitting there like, yep.
It's funny because she's very introverted. So we have long chats, but she's very reserved and stuff. So it'll be a lot of me sort of chatting and sort of poking her, trying to get a good answer. But I think one of the rules that we have is that if we say something went well for you today, it's got to be very detailed. It can't just be, yeah, it was good, yeah, it was bad. They're easy answers. We want more detailed stuff. You can't just sort of like, push over a question and say, no, it was all right. Yeah. No. What is it? So it makes you think about it. You don't have to answer it straight away. You can like have a think about it, come back with an answer.
Do you feel like by doing that, it's made you able to see more good things within the day?
100%.
Yeah, because I was going to say, by asking those questions, you got to think back and pinpoint. I feel like that will then ripple effect into your actual day life of noticing things in the moment when they are good. Is that correct?
100%. And it highlights all the good and it shadows all the little bad stuff that used to take control over my life. Like just little things that would happen. Now I don't focus on it so much. When it happens, like a passing thought, accept it, gone, out the window. I don't hold on to it for the whole day. Yeah. And the more you sort of focus on all the good things, the less you focus on all the bad things. And more often than not, the bad things, like, it's a 5-minute problem that took you 24 hours to get over. And that's what it was for me for a long time. And now when someone asks, how's your life or what do you love about your life, I couldn't name a bad thing, to be honest with you. In perspective, like I'm so grateful for so much in my life. And even when there's a challenge, and things I'm a bit stuck on, it's not a deterrent. It's not I get down about it. I'm kind of like, oh, this is a nice little challenge. Like, how am I going to solve this?
Well, that's it. It's like when the challenges come up, it's like, do you have the perspective of it that it's bad? Or do you have the perspective of it like, this is going to grow me?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like the way you look at it is going to determine the way you feel about it.
Yeah, your turn.
My turn. So for me, I'm more of a night person, so I have like night routines. But things I do daily would be 4-6-9 breathing. So it's like in the nose for 4, hold for 6, exhale for 9, repeat for about 3 to 5 times. I do like a deeper breath work, like an hour breath work session, which is a meditation included into that, maybe once every 6 weeks. And that's just more so of just helping like with a reset of the nervous system and such. One thing I've found recently, and this is only very new to me within the last 6 weeks, is religion. And I've started going to church. The reason this started was because I woke up one day and within me deeply, I felt a call to God. And before I had this feeling of a call to God, I was never religious. None of my family's religious. I wouldn't say I didn't believe in God, basically. But I woke up one morning, about 6 weeks ago, with this deep urge of God's calling me. I was like, what is this? And I started getting these random messages drop in, like, good and honesty will prevail. Like these random quotes and verses. And then when I started going to church, I was hearing the thoughts I was having repeated by the pastor in the church. And I was like,
this is weird.
Yeah, this is weird. So then ever since I've had this feeling within me, I've been going to church every Sunday just to try and connect to that calling. But I feel like every week it's getting stronger. So I've been going to church daily. I pray daily. Yeah. I read the Bible daily. And that's helped me a lot over the last 6 weeks as well.
Something that I would love to know is what's your connection like with your family today? Or you can pass.
No, I'm very happy to share. I'm just thinking because the reason it's tricky to enter because about 98% of my family's in the UK and I have a lot of love for them. It's just hard to actually connect with time zones and things like that. But every time I fly home, like it's back to normal, everyone's family. Yeah. With my brother, really good. We probably speak daily, but he's in the UK. With my sister, she's been like my best friend. I feel like growing up when I was a kid, she was like that big sister that always looked after me. With my mum, I speak to her all the time. With my dad, I don't speak to at all.
Yeah. Okay. We've got some quick fire questions for you.
Sweet.
What do you love about your job?
Seeing in people's eyes that there is hope. Because when I first meet people, majority of the time, they feel like some of them can feel like there's nothing in life, there's nothing to gain. And the moment I see hope in their eyes, I know that they're on the path to become a better version of themselves. So I really love that moment.
Yeah. What's your deepest fear?
Being alone.
Yeah.
Definitely. The reasoning behind that would be because growing up, I was alone. And now I've got a beautiful fiance. I really want kids. But a deep fear of me would definitely be alone again.
Alone. I think we've touched on this a little bit. But what are your pillars to living a healthy and full life? 3
pillars I have is courage, proud, and bravery. if I look back on every single day, I was courageous, I was brave, and I'm proud, I've had a successful day, which is going to lead me to a successful life. I used to believe happiness is something that I should chase. Then I realized happiness, I will get things that will give me instant happiness and instant gratification. So now I believe if you look back on your day and you're proud, happiness is an extension of that. So being proud, for sure.
It's funny you said that because my next question is, what do you believe happiness is?
I believe happiness is something short-term that fulfills us, but it's not sustainable.
Yeah.
I believe, I'm going to speak with myself as a man, I believe, especially for men, happiness shouldn't be something we chase, because I feel like we're going to chase things that may not actually fulfill us and be healthy or productive or helpful. Mm-hmm. We might chase things that are instant gratification, instant dopamine hits at times, but if we live more on the pillars of being proud, happiness is going to be an extension of that.
100%. Do you have any mentors or someone that you look up to that inspires you?
Myself.
Nice.
100%. Myself. Every challenge I've been through, I always reflect on myself and say, I can do it. I guess if I have to give an external answer, would be someone when I was a drug addict, overcoming addiction, overcoming mental health issues, was a musician called Cursor.
Oh, yeah.
Because he was talking a lot about drug addiction, and then when he got sober, it was kind of like the same time I got sober. So then in his music, he's talking about becoming sober and the challenges of that, and I was relating with it. So 100%. If there's an external one, it would be Cursor, because his music just felt like he was talking to me.
Yeah, shout out Cursor. I used to watch, I used to stay late up at night and watch Cursor's rap battles.
Yeah.
Do you remember them?
Yeah, 360.
Yeah, 360. I used to love that.
So yeah, a big goal of mine is getting Cursor on the poddy. So Cursor, come on the poddy, brother.
Let's go. What pain do you enjoy having?
Growth.
Yes.
I love putting myself in positions that I know is going to grow me. I go to events by myself with the intention of it's going to be hard because I got no one to lean on for support. I just love being in environments that test me a lot. I love it.
Yeah, I love that.
Challenges.
So what sort of events are you going to? Are they around the Sunny Coast, are they?
Sunny Coast, Gold Coast, Brisbane. We've got one coming up with an old mentor that I used to have. He's still a good friend of mine. His name's Dion Monkovic. And he's got a business one-day event coming up, so I'm going to that in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
So things like that.
What's the greatest gift that another human has given you?
Love.
From who?
Everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone I've interacted with that's given me love is the best feeling ever. You just, especially when it's pure, you just feel it, that unconditional love.
Yeah. What piece of advice would you give someone that has gone through something similar or is going through something similar? Just
know that what is happening now doesn't have to happen forever. Like the cycles you're in, whether it's thoughts, whether it's environments, whether it's habits, they can all stop now by making a decision. Yeah. Decision's not going to be easy. The work's not going to be easy. Like you said, with your nightmares, it took about 5 years or so. With myself, overcoming addiction and mental health challenges took about 5 years. It's a long road. But sacrificing 5 years of struggle to try and grow, to have a lifetime of feeling great, it's a good investment, I think.
100%. And I think you got to embrace the journey rather than the destination. And something that I've changed my mentality is that now I embrace the work. Like I'm working towards something, but I enjoy the process now.
Yeah.
You know, someone will, what's that quote? Someone who enjoys to walk will walk further than the person that likes the destination.
And the journey is where all the beauty is. You know, like the end of my road may be a nice house, but I'm going to miss all the beautiful flowers on the way. I'm going to miss the sunshine. I'm going to miss all the great things that are on the journey to get there.
It's so true, because I look back at my rugby sort of in my 20s and moments that I really enjoy are not when I'm playing in front of crowds or making teams. Some of the most memorable moments is when I'm 19 years old, I've just done 10 hours of labouring during the day at Sunny Coast, and I'm quickly like jumping in my car. I'm driving all the way down to Brisbane, make it there on time, train for 3 hours, and drive all the way back to Sunny Coast, and get back at 11:45 at night, wake up at 4 in, and do that all again.
Yeah.
And it sounds silly, but I look back on it and go, how the hell did I do that for 3 or 4 years? Like that moment, those moments there is what I enjoy the most and look back on fondly more than I do, say, the championships or the games won or the grand finals.
Yeah, it's completely true. Like that's why I think it's important, especially with yourself. You said with your partner, you reflect back on the day, the things that were good, the extension that leads into your day-to-day life where you focus on what's good.
Yeah.
And that's all about focusing on the journey and enjoying it, because at the end of the day, the destination, I believe, will always change over time, because even though my mission in life will be the same, but there'll be different directions that are going to get me to the end goal, which is probably the end of my life. That's probably the end of it. So like the things that are going to get me there, it's going to be so many different roads, but they're all driving forward. And it's just enjoying each step, each road, each journey as what they are, because at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying the moments, it's like you're going to be struggling a lot. And that's 100%. Why I think it's important to be able to seek help and open up. I think that's the first part of it, is actually opening up and speaking to people. That's
the hardest part, isn't it? And then it's all downhill. That's what I get through to people. It's honestly, I agree. The hardest part is that first step, but it gets easier. Yeah. It does get easier after that.
With your question as well, like what advice do I give people that went through the similar thing I did, is don't do what I did. Don't lock yourself in the room for 2 weeks, because that put more pressure and more unhelpful experiences and emotions in my life. Yeah. So the thing I would recommend to people is straight away opening up and finding ways to interact with people that will lead you in the right direction.
Yeah, love that. I'm not too sure if you're familiar with the closing tradition of the podcast.
No.
I get a loved one, a family member, a close friend. They send in a question for the guest. We have 2 people for you. Your wonderful sister.
Oh, Chantel.
She's got 2 questions for you.
Ooh.
Okay. The first one, what is the most important lesson that you've learned in the past decade of your life, and how have you applied it?
Most important lesson. One of them would be, the first thing that came to mind is giving people their flowers while they're here. Every day I make sure with the people I'm interacting with, I let them know how much I appreciate them, how much I love them. I feel like that's been huge for me, because by extension, I feel that energy too. But one of the biggest things I've learned is just showing gratitude in life to people and yourself.
Yeah, I love that. If you could speak to your adolescent self now, what advice and support would you give him?
That there is another way. Because at the time, what I was doing, I thought was the only way in life. I didn't know there was things like feeling happy or feeling fulfilled or feeling proud. I didn't know any of that existed. So I would just guide them in ways to show them that there is steps and procedures in place you can take that will make you feel all those things, which is things like going to the gym, doing breath work, being in positive environments, practicing gratitude, and just doing all these things to see something bigger than myself in life.
You can replace all those bad habits with good ones and make yourself feel a whole lot better.
Exactly, because all the hours of my day are the same. They're just filled with completely different things.
Yep. Got one more. Who's it from?
Good question, Shen. I love you.
So we've got...
This next one's a good friend.
I think she's a good friend. Rhiannon?
She's my best friend.
Is she your best friend? Your beautiful partner. What are your main values you'd like to teach to your children someday?
Good question, Rhiannon. I feel like it'd be similar to my own, like being proud. Proud, I believe, is a big one. I want my kids to do things that make you proud, because by extension, you're going to be happy. By extension, you're going to be fulfilled. By extension, you're going to feel all these positive neurochemicals. And if I give my kids the value of do things daily or do something weekly that makes you feel proud, I guarantee you'll live a good life.
Love that. Thanks very much, Ryan.
Thank you,
coming
brother.
on.
Thanks for having me.
There's something that I do want to mention, is that 7 years sober?
Yeah, 8 this year.
8 years sober.
Yeah.
Congrats, mate.
Thanks, brother.
Huge effort.
Thank you.
And life has never been better for you.
No, definitely not. It's going to get better from here.
100%. And for everyone listening, One Talk podcast, check it out. We'll put it in the show notes down the bottom. He's doing amazing things, got incredible guests, and you're leaving a massive impact on the community, and well done to you. And
before we finish, I just want to say thank you to yourself, brother, for having me on, give me a platform to speak and share my story as well, but not just my story, but everyone's story that's coming on here, and even your own story as well, because you're just as important too. So I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate you. I love you, brother.
Love you too, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.